Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our last conversation about school board. We are grateful that you are here this evening. And if you are here and not one of the panelists, please put in the chat how you feeling today. And if you got a chance to actually go and early vote, today is Monday, October 21st, and it is the first day of early voting in South Carolina. So we're definitely excited about that. Tonight, we're going to have a conversation with two amazing individuals. So I can't wait to get into it. But I first want to give a brief overview of who we are as an organization. E3 was founded in 2020 during the pandemic. And I am one of the co-founders, Audrey Lane, and Letitia Vaughn is the other co-founder. You can say hello to her. She's hanging out in the background tonight. And we really created E3 as a way to connect and be a bridge between systems and organizations, systems and our community, in particular, our families and our students. And so our mission at E3 is to ensure that systemic inequities do not continue to exist and that our community is educated, empowered, and elevated to exercise their collective agency in the South. And so we are not here as an organization to do anything or to upon our community, but we want to always work in concert and alignment, and we call it co-creation with our community. And so these conversations are just another outlet and for us to be able to do that. So over the past few months, since June, we have been really focused on the Get Out the Vote effort. We are a not-for-profit organization, so we are a 501c3. We are nonpartisan. We do not endorse candidates. What we do, however, is educate our constituents and educate our community members about the importance of, in this case, school board elections. And so this summer, we started with a Juneteenth tabling at Moja, downtown on King Street, and we have tabled probably over 8 to 10 different events since then. And at that time, we get an opportunity to engage with our voters, to provide literature and education, to register voters, to educate about dates around elections and deadlines that are upcoming. And we've also participated in candidate forums. And so last week we had a candidate forum in North Charleston in partnership with the CAJM, which Raynique is representing tonight, Charleston Area Justice Ministry, North Charleston Alumni Chapter, Charleston NAACP, and am I forgetting one organization? I can't remember. But those forums, which we were participants or we attended, we'll make sure through the middle of this week, we will post all of those because, again, we want our community to be educated about all of the candidates of our school board elections. But in particular, our focus has been Charleston County School Board, where we have 10 candidates vying for seats in districts 2, 4, 6, and 8. We have also been collecting data from the community at these tabling events and just asking opinions about what are those issues that are important to you. And so the top 3 issues that have come up are student academics and closing the achievement gap, teacher and staff diversity, and school safety. So without further ado, I would like to get into our conversation with our panelists. Ethan Ashley is an elected school board member in New Orleans, Louisiana, who serves also as the CEO of School Board Partners. School Board Partners is a nonprofit organization that supports the development of elected school board members across the country to lead with courage, competence, and impact. In addition to his work with School Board Partners, Ethan is an attorney, Does that mean you're going to talk a lot tonight, Ethan? And has worked on policy, advocacy, and governmental affairs issues in many positions, including on the Hill, at the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the Urban League of Louisiana, and at the ADL. Educationally, Ethan attended Howard University. Okay, HU. Did you go? Were you in DC this weekend?
I wasn't.
Oh, it's homecoming season, everyone. He obtained a bachelor's degree in political science and a Juris Doctor by the age of 22. Ethan is happily married to Ariel, and they are raising 3 amazing children, Crew, Jace, and Sage. Please welcome Ethan to the conversation.
So glad to be here.
Thank you. Raynique Syas is a community organizer in Charleston, right here, originally from Watts, California. She now leads CAJM, Charleston Area Justice Ministry, fighting poverty and injustice. Raynique's experiences with racism and unequal schools motivated her to fix problems in education, housing, and other areas. At CAJM, she's advocated for improved school discipline practices and made public transport fairer. In addition to organizing work, she's also involved in other community groups and leadership programs in the Charleston area. So welcome to both Raynique and Ethan. Thank you guys for being here this evening.
Hey.
So we're going to jump right into the conversation tonight. And I have a few questions that I have created based on our conversations that we've had and your expertise. So Ethan, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about school board members?
That's a great question to start with. I'll say one of the biggest misconceptions is that school board members are just volunteers with limited influence over the school system. In reality, we know the school boards, particularly school board members, make decisions that certainly directly impact student outcomes, resource allocations, and policy implementation. But I don't know, people often believe that our role is either purely ceremonial or super political, but it's definitely much deeper, where we are, in my opinion, policy architects and accountability officers responsible for sort of ensuring that every decision, whether it's approving budgets or hiring a superintendent or setting some of the educational priorities and goals, that every decision creates equitable opportunities for students. Let me see. Another misconception is that school board work happens only in public meetings, but the real work happens behind the scenes, sort of building relationships, reviewing research, and engaging with communities to align sort of your priorities with the policy stuff. So those are some of the misconceptions.
Who are you potentially building relationships with? You mentioned community, so who else would you be building relationships with?
That's a great question. Other electeds. I mean, that's probably the first place, largely because we serve in a community, a city environment. There are other local electeds, there are other state electeds who play a big part in our ability to do what we do, largely because most district budgets, school district budgets, are at the whim of either and or both city or county governments, whether you do a millage or tax or however you all part of your funding formula is created. And the other half is largely what happens at the state budget. So you need relationships at the local and state level. And most times those relationships are crucial with your ability to get and secure resources.
I appreciate that. And so you've described the school board as a puzzle. So can you say more about the pieces that you believe are necessary to have that complete picture? Because
Oh,
a lot of people, like, so there's the misconceptions, but you just described a very sophisticated role. It is, I am saying, and have said over the last few weeks, the school board of yesterday is not the school board of today. So what are some of those puzzle pieces that are necessary?
I am certainly here for yesterday's price is not today's price, Lord. I need y'all to understand. I'll tell you, there is a need for individuals to have like relational competencies. You need to have tactical competencies. You need to have leadership skills. You need to know the governance and policy roles, and you need to be really good at uh, you know understanding how to engage community and be representative of community. You have to know how to not just have oversight and management of a superintendent, but certainly how to hire a high level executive of a multi-million, if not billion-dollar organization. And you got to be able to understand and read budgets that are, again, multi-million, if not billion-dollar, budgets, and do so with some form of a value set, core set of beliefs, and understand how those values play out in in the priorities that you set, as well as having some understanding around data, data-driven decision making, particularly data that's disaggregated. All those things play, like if you know these things, those things fit together to make a really good school board member. And if one piece is missing, whether it's lacking community voice or weak accountability, the whole structure sort of falters. And, I think a healthy board and board member sort of balances all these elements to make sure that they're delivering for students.
So as a voter, is it my role to try to look at the board and see, and because our school board meetings, across the nation, some of them can be very long and taxing, and so we'll get into that with Raynique shortly. But as a voter, like, talk to me in first pew language, like, what you're teaching me the song. What are the pieces or the parts of the song that need to kind of come together, that I as a voter am trying to see whether these candidates who are vying for my vote have what it takes.
Yeah, I will tell you. First of all, I voted with my daughter today in her first presidential election. She's 18. So she had that experience. It was a great experience. And so, what I'll tell you is that I think the onus is a shared one, right? I mean, the hope is that you have individuals who are representatives of the community such that they're reaching back to you all to hear the needs and desires for the community, and you all are hearing that in some of the platform things that they're saying they want to do, sitting in the role. And if and they're reaching out to you all, and I'm hoping that you all are reaching back. Lord, it goes both ways. And if
Yeah.
neither one is reaching, I just want to be clear. It's gonna be a challenge for everybody involved. Everybody's gonna have some challenges. So we're hoping that everyone's reaching towards one another. But to the extent that that doesn't happen, I will tell you one of the best ways to make a determination on whether individuals who are offering themselves are doing it in a way that is is right for your community is to like talk to a current student or a recent graduate and sort of walk them through what you have learned about your potential school board candidate or what you know to be true about them, and then see how they react to the experience. I say this with all just I was this past week I was at a national school board conference. The Council of Great City Schools had a conference in Dallas, and they had a convening or they convened a panel, excuse me, of student board representatives. So student representatives who serve on the school board, and they exist in several different jurisdictions around the country.
Mhm.
And these leaders, one of the leaders said something so clear. She said, "Look, uh, y- many of you all are making decisions about us and young people, and y'all gonna be dead in 20 years." And I said, "Oh Lord," I said, don't look at them, Jesus, don't look at them, don't look at them in the face, don't look at the ones you
But
talking
it's
about.
true.
It's the babies. Let me tell you, the babies were not lying. They were telling
Yeah.
all the full truth. And
Mhm.
as I look, I have some boomers that sit on the board with me who I love, and I also worry deeply about. I'm not gonna lie. You went to school during a time where schools were segregated, and I just want to be clear, baby. That wasn't that long ago, but it certainly wasn't in the last 4 decades of educational experiences. And so just if the people that you all are interacting with, if they're not clear about what this current generation is facing in order to serve them well, not the generation that not us, not our parents, not our grandparents, the
Mm.
current generation, if they're not representative of them, because they are different. I want to acknowledge as someone who has an 18-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 2.5-year-old. Lord, I'm gonna be a parent forever. I just want to acknowledge that they
You all
different.
right, well, you're gonna be a boomer. Okay, I'm just a 2.5-year-old. Yeah.
They different. So, I mean, I think explain it to one of those newly graduated or current student, if it resonates with them, I think you're headed, you have a good, I think you have someone who's certainly on the right pathway. Uh, I think you also want to make sure people know where the bathrooms are. You want to make sure that people have been to a damn school board meeting before, that they understand, some form of parliamentary rules of something. You don't
Mhm.
want to get up there and they just start embarrassing you because they never even heard of Robert's rules. They trying to figure out who Robert is. I just want to be clear. You
And
go,
while he's ruling today.
why is Robert ruling? Who is
Yeah.
Robert and why
Yeah.
is he ruling? I think these are certainly important things. And again, I go back to tactical competencies, understanding both of governance, policy development, strategy planning. You certainly want to make sure they have relational competencies. I believe relational competencies are some of the most important competencies that boards need to have. This is largely because we are not executives. We
Mm,
serve, our power is derived by our majority, not
mm,
in the minority. So we
mm,
serve at the pleasure of the whole board's belief in whatever the thing that we're doing. Don't get me wrong, you are an elected, but you are only as strong as your ability to count to 4, 6,
yeah.
8, whatever the majority is for your particular board. And that's really important to acknowledge. So you having relational competencies is important. And then you need people with leadership skills. I don't, you got to make sure someone's able to lead on that board, and then have, again, deep relationships in community, and with other electeds, because your job is to be representative of the community, and your job is to make sure that you're able to bring home the bacon and have those relationships and making sure people are supporting your folks, because some of the issues that we care deeply about, whether it is school shooting and school safety,
Mm,
unfortunately the school board is not responsible for how officers are trained. The
mm,
city is in most places, or county, depending on where you're at, which means that as an elected, you have to have relationships with those individuals to be able to say, and that, use soft power, right? Because you have no real authority over that governmental agency, but using soft power to say, here's what our community would like to see and would like to make sure is true, for the folks in our community. So I'll stop there.
So, can you unpack relational competencies, please? That is a very Esquire-esque term. No, I'm just kidding. But really, like can we get along, right?
Yeah.
Can we work across our individual differences for a greater good? Can you just like unpack that for us?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I will say it certainly starts with self before I even get to can you get along with others? I mean, like, are you a whole human that is healed and all the things that it
Mhm.
takes? Do you know your own triggers? And when you are triggered, do you know how to apologize? Are you the leader that can say, I'm sorry, I don't know, and I need help? Those are the three things most leaders struggle with. If you
Mhm.
struggle with those things, you're probably going to struggle in the role. And certainly you want people with a confidence, but you want, especially serving on the school board, you need them to have a confidence that they're willing to forego their ego in order for the betterment of the thing. And so that oftentimes means that you may be called a out of your name,
Mhm.
not a child of God, and 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 your ego can't say, or the fear of not being accepted can't make you can't be willing to backtrack, or the fear of not being invited to the barbecues when you're actually doing the right thing. You got to be able to stand on business, as the young people would say. And so I would tell you that's hugely important. And some of that you won't learn until you get into a heated meeting and people are on both sides of the fence of the thing, and you're the tie vote, and you got to see where you are and in that moment of controversy. And so, like, self is really, I think I start there. And I'll end on the self piece by saying we have all known or worked for or been among individuals who are really smart. They know how to do the thing. They're very clear about the thing, but they are not healed whole humans, which
Mhm.
means that they shouldn't be leading nobody nowhere. Nobody wants to work for them, all the things. And so, your ability to be that in that role is huge because you're representative of a larger community. Now, once your self is together, now you got to be able to also figure out how can you in yourself, all your triggers, your whole understanding of your psyche, how can you then fit in a team of 5, 7, 9, 21 if you're in Chicago, Lord?
Mhm.
How can you fit in a team like that? And so, I think that is that's when you, I think, can certainly learn your own leadership skills, your own leadership uh, 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 leanings. This is where you take one of those leadership assessments. I love a couple of them. If I'm honest, I've done a couple of them, and what I'll tell you is, like, the individual leadership assessments that some people are probably familiar with, like the Myers-Briggs, that'll tell you a little bit about yourself. Those are great, and I think you certainly want to make sure uh, who you are within those type of assessments, right? And then, but I want to say the ones you really want to make sure that you are able to do are the ones that are team focused, because your ability to, like, again, I think I talked about it earlier, your ability is only that of your full team and getting to a majority. And so you want to make sure that you know how to lead within that of a team. So I think taking those assessments and figuring out how you interact in your team, or asking your superintendent to have you all take a team assessment and learn each other's strengths. Strengths finders is a strong one that I would recommend. That will allow for folks to learn one another, and then from there you get to see how you all can sort of mesh together, and where some of the areas that when there's miscommunication with one another, you learn that it's not done because of like personal slights towards one another, but rather it's just how I move within a team setting. And now you learn that because of that situation.
So let's take that the assessments. I'm healed, I'm whole, and let's go back to the puzzle pieces.
No doubt.
So regarding with the current climate, regarding censorship, book banning, political interest groups, that are a part of our conversation on our school boards now, right? All across the country, all across the country. I don't think there's one jurisdiction that is not having these conversations. And so have those particular pieces shifted or changed over time based on our current state of school boards?
I think it's a matter of privilege here. So I'm gonna say that it's a matter of privilege. I feel like if you, I feel like for some communities, marginalized communities, unfortunately, it's always been a right to learn, like fighting for the right to learn.
Mm.
Uh, I think it's sort of this moment, I think, has shone a bright light on challenges in certain districts that have always been challenging for, uh, again, marginalized populations. But, I will say in this moment, it's no longer just about governance for school board members. It is about defending both democracy and the right to learn at a larger spectrum for not just board members of color, but also now majority board members, which the majority of our board members are white. And so that now the majority is having to feel the weight of, you know, hell, we just want to make sure that students have the right to learn. And I think that's really tough. But boards in that relational competency must find ways to navigate these polarized issues. And what I'll say in this moment is, again, I don't think the puzzle pieces have necessarily changed, but I think some pieces like community engagement and legal safeguards have become more critical than ever. And I think that we need to be vigilant of making sure that we have individuals who are well equipped to serve in these spaces. And some of the well equipment are some of the uh, uh, being ready for the moment and being well equipped is knowing your governance framework and creating a framework in that sort of corrals everyone around a set of values and a set of beliefs about your district that doesn't need to say or ring out the word equity, but that just centers that as what good governance is through your, again, governance frameworks. And, there's several different frameworks of governance. You have student focused outcome governance, you have policy governance, you have empowered governance. That's our governance framework. And all these different governance frameworks, if you're equipped well, can sort of uh, 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 I'm not going to, boxing in is sort of an interesting way of putting it, but it makes sure that it elevates a certain level of things that boards are responsible for and makes boards have to stay out of things that they should not be responsible for.
Mhm.
And so, again, being well equipped on how to govern really well, you're clear about how to use those frameworks to sort of uh, sit the foolishness down, as you say. Sit that down. Sit that down. You're doing too much in the in
So,
the in
so
the
the
course of the
framework are
framework.
the guardrails or are they the road?
See, the frameworks are certainly guardrails on how you move about the road.
Gotcha.
And in some cases, they set what type of road you're on. So let me
Mhm.
say on the student focused outcome governance framework, your road is largely focused around students. So you're not going to be uh, uh, in operations, you're not going to be around spending deep time around some of the other operational building things that some folks may spend time on. If you're in policy governance, you're not going to be thinking deeply around things outside of how to adopt the right type of guardrails so policies can be created that move towards your goals. And if you're empowered governance, all these things will set the right type of role for you to go down, but then set the type of guardrails again for you to be clear about where you're supposed to be and where you're not. And it's odd, I know this is sort of inside baseball. You ask anybody what governance framework your board is under. Most will tell you, I don't even know what you're saying to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't get it. And most board members can't tell you what governance frameworks that they're under, or the name of the governance framework. And that's largely because most boards aren't under a framework, which is oftentimes the problem. You want to know why your board is a little dysfunctional? It's because they don't even know what framework they're under. They just out here. They just out here, as the kids. You out here. And you don't need to be out here. You need to be very clear about how you are moving and under what guise and framework you all are moving, such that the community is clear about how you're moving. They're clear about how to hold you accountable. And you are clear about how to hold yourself accountable within the frameworks that you are supposed to be moving in.
So last question I'll ask right now, before we bring Raynique in is, how do you prepare for your board meetings? And what does that process look like? So a few weeks ago, um, one of the great theologians, Howard John Wesley, did a YouTube on from the pen to the pulpit, and was like, what's the process of getting from a thought of and a divine, inspiration of a word to actually getting in the pulpit and delivering on that sermon on Sunday morning. And it was a week-long process. Can you talk to us like what the process looks like from, board meeting to board meeting?
Yeah. Look, I think if it's done well, meaning your service is done well, you will have a board monitoring calendar by which you are very clear about what is happening that month related to your goals that you're headed toward. Now, let me acknowledge that. Why I say if you're doing it well, most of us are not doing it well. So I'm not even going to sit there. I just wanted to make sure I put the framework in, because at least you in a great setting, you're gonna know what you at least dealing with for the month. And in some cases, that's not the case. In most cases, excuse me, that's not the case. And so, I say preparation is certainly everything. And so for me, I approach every meeting with a sense of intentionality. I start with sort of reviewing where we were in our last meeting. Are there things that we were supposed to do that we didn't do? Are there things that, you know, uh, I'm clear we need to bring up this meeting by virtue of something we promised we would do in that last meeting? So, I even start with that last meeting. And if I'm honest, in some places and spaces, I will go to the meeting of the previous year in the same month to understand what were we doing last year, this month, this time, and are there things that I missed? Like, are there things that happened in this month that that happened last year that should be happening during this month and time? And sometimes that's clear. And so that's a thing. You gotta, you want to review obviously the agenda and any of the supporting documents that are available to you. And I think beyond that, I would and spend deep time with community, hearing from whether it's a community council that I put together personally, or hearing from some of the uh, um, school board councils that our superintendents put together with our guidance, our student council, our parent council, hearing from them about what issues are bubbling up for them. And I say that because, you may need to put something on the agenda that isn't currently on the agenda. And you have the authority and right to do that. Although most board members don't start putting stuff on the board meeting uh until it's until you're almost in your second terms in some instances. But on day one, you can start putting stuff on the board meeting if you know how to use your authority and power, right? And then, so I think making it a point to again meet with key stakeholders, teachers, families, staff, um, to hear their perspective. And I'll also just say, while that's all important, the most important thing for me is data. I want to know, I want to read what's happening with student outcomes, attendance, district performance overall for that past month, and or just in general, what's going on with our finances. Are we? I want to I tell people all the time, you want to know what you really believe in. This is also at home. I'm sure if you all are listening, your Uber Eats bill may be larger than it should be in this moment, and you want to know what you really believe in. You go see what you pay for. Where's your money going? And so you want to reconcile what's happening in your budget. Are you on track? So I would also pull the budget again from last year during that time, during that month this year, look directly at them. Are we on par where we were last year? Why aren't we? This will start to give you questions to ask on the dais. But not only on the dais, hopefully you should ask these questions before you get to the dais, so you have action that you could take while you're on the dais, because sometimes we wait to get to the dais and we want to make, like, sometimes we want to sound smart. But if you asked the question before you got to the dais, you could have made an action item happen if you needed an action item to happen. You obviously want to know where your most important employee is, which is your superintendent. Where are they at in terms of their contract? Where are they at in terms of their goals for that year? And make sure that you're following up on those things. And all this is capsulated into one meeting. And I'm thinking about these things. Of course, you got committees, so you want to make sure you're thinking deeply about each of those committees. But I sort of broke out what those things are amongst the committee stuff, whether it's budget, policy, and personnel, inclusive of your superintendent. And then I think the last thing for me is, like, in terms of my goals for that year, where am I at in terms of making short and long-term impact? And what are we doing to move something on, in that board meeting to get to the next level? And some people will take the next step and sort of evaluate, are we spending enough time in our board meeting on student-focused things? And I think if you start to do that, that's also, I'd say, the right thing.
And so on average, Ethan, for the people in the back, how many hours are you spending? Because you have a whole nother job, like a whole job. Not only just like you kind of supporting an
Oh.
organization, like you're leading an organization, and you have a family with a 2.5-year-old running around. So on average, what are you committing to ensure that all those things, and we know we're human, so some weeks we're better than others, but just to give us a view of, like, how many hours is that a week that you're really putting into the work of your position as an elected school board member?
Oh man. I think every month is unique, but at the base, I think you've got to be spending close to 25 25 hours to get to the right thing. And that's largely community stuff, right? Like, if you're an elected and you're doing it right, you want to make sure the most time is spent in community and hearing from others and lifting up their issues and then going back and doing the research and data and stuff. And so, I think you're right in that 25 hours a month uh time period, because you hopefully you're going to churches. You want to hear from the people. You want to go where the people are. And
Mhm.
so that means you got to go sit in community. And if your community, which I know it is, it's like ours, people want to spend time with you. They want to see you. They want to touch you, and they're gonna sit with you. They're gonna get with you.
And we
And
want to talk
so
about the thing.
and we're going to talk about all the things. And so, I think, again, if you're doing it right, and I didn't even talk about how you then communicate back out to community, because then you need to make sure you have a newsletter that's properly going out and making sure you're communicating all these things. Yeah, you're going to spend a good 25 hours or so at the on the base end of what you're going to do. If you got something real juicy happening, you're going to spend upwards to 40 to 60 hours on the work. And that's part of course. I will tell you, part of course. So
Awesome. Um, I appreciate your newsletter. Can you send us a copy of that? I would, and that's
no
and
doubt.
that's your newsletter from the desk of Ethan Ashley as the school board member representing me. It goes
Yeah.
out to your constituents?
Yep. Yep, that's how it works. And there are, this is sort of the thing when you join a board, when you think about norms that should happen, setting the right culture in the beginning is really important. So how you communicate to community is really important. And both individually and as a board. Sometimes you want to ask, does the board leader send out monthly communications with this in partnership with your CEO or superintendent? Hopefully they do. And if they don't, at the very least, maybe you will send out something once a month or quarterly. What I will tell you is, uh, on average, quarterly newsletters is good to send out to folks. But folks want to hear from you, and you want to be able to be connected to them. And I'll tell you, on average, I meant to say this, on average, uh, service on school board, you spend about 1,200 to 1,500 hours a year, which is about 30 hours a month is what we've surveyed across districts around the country. So
Yeah. So I appreciate you, and I want to bring Raynique into the conversation. And you, great bridge from what you were talking about as far as the community. Anyone who has been watching any of our school board meetings over the last year has seen this woman in the audience, likely standing up, rocking somebody to sleep, but she's present. And so, Raynique, I just want to start with, like me, you are a working mom with multiple children and other obligations. You too are leading a whole organization. So how do you remain engaged with the school board? And if you can't be at a meeting, then can you talk about what other ways our viewers are able to engage with their school board member?
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, Ethan. I just feel like I learned so much from you just in this short time about like what a school board, what the role of a school board member is supposed to look like. So thank you for sharing that. But Audrey, to answer your question, like this job as a mom is my first job, and it's like oftentimes the hardest job, especially like any parenting role. But the primary parent in the family is like we have so many things that we're trying to be and trying to take care of. So it's oftentimes like, really hard to stay abreast of like emails that are coming from the school and like all of this kind of stuff, all of this information that you're processing all the time. So I have a unique role where it's like for me personally, my job is has me where I'm uniquely positioned to have to, like, that is my role, to be at a school board meeting. Like I have to go there to understand and to learn new things that are happening um, in the district. For most parents, that's not the case. Their job doesn't require them to come and sit at a school board meeting. So there's a challenge for them. They find it difficult to attend school board meetings, mostly because, like, for our district specifically, you have like a time limit to where you have to get there to sign up, especially if you want to speak. You have like restraints due to traffic or anything like that. I think if you want to speak, you have to be there and sign up by 5:15. A lot of people in our community, like, they getting off at 5 o'clock and just now starting that battle with the traffic to get downtown or to get to the next street over downtown or whatever the case may be. So there's a very there's a lot of difficulty concerning like being involved at the school board level. Even getting to your kid's school for regular meetings, right, is a difficulty. All the time we talk to teachers and staff, and the number one complaint is like parents can't get here. And it's like parents are working, grandparents are working, students are working, everybody in the household is working in order to like maintain a household. So we have this problem with time consumption, period. I just want to lay that out there, that it's not just like getting to a school board meeting, it's battling life circumstances that are challenging enough, and like your role in your family that may play a role in you actually ending up being in a space, or having the time to commit to those things. So there are barriers that need to be addressed for parents to have access to being engaged with school board meetings. And I think Ethan kind of addressed some of that. Like, Where's all the newsletters that keep me informed? Where's the emails that come out to me to tell me what y'all discussed? Where's a communication? That communication and dialogue should be open between the families and the board and the superintendent and all of the parties involved, so that it makes it easier to access those things. But also things that you can do if those things are not available to you. Like, for instance, in our district, all of our, thankfully, all of our meetings are recorded and they're on Zoom. So sometimes if I can't get to a meeting, I'm listening on Zoom while I'm doing something else. I know you mentioned that I've been in meetings where I'm bringing my kid. That means I have to pick up my son early from school. I have to drop my daughter off at work. I have to navigate all of this traffic and fight to get down there. And then I'm standing in the meeting with my baby. But if I'm not doing that, then I'm watching on Zoom, I'm listening on Zoom, I'm playing it back on Zoom so that I can hear what happened. I have the privilege of having like a number of community members that are working with me, where I can get a report back from other community members, where I can hear what happened and I can see notes that other people have taken. You have that option too. If you have a group of people, you can't get there tonight, get with some of your friends who can go, somebody who works close to downtown, and y'all alternate shifts, and one person is going to this board meeting this month and they're taking notes and they're coming back to the group and they're having and you guys are having conversations about what was discussed at the meeting. Or get with other community groups like CAJM, like E3, like NAACP, who are actively attending these meetings, and ask questions about what happened, and discuss what you watched on the playback or any of those types of things. And I think the overall thing to remember, if you want to engage with with the school board, and it's difficult, is to undifficult it. Like, this is your school board, you elected them, and like hold them accountable to being the group that you elected into those seats, even if you didn't personally elect that person for that seat. Like, we have these constituent districts. The entire school board is, I think Ms. Dunmeyer said in our forum, like, they work for us. We're there, they're employed by us. And so hold them accountable to that. Be curious about it. Ask questions about things you don't understand. Write them, email them, call them, blow their phone up. Your kids go to this school. You have a right to not only have your questions answered, but have them answered in a way that you understand and be informed about things. So.
Yeah, I like that. Undifficult it. That's gonna be a new term. You need to undifficult it this. So why is it important? I just feel like even if you weren't a CEO of CAJM, that this would still be important enough to you that you would find a way or make a way, right? And so what is at stake right now and on the ballot for the school board election? We're not talking about the individuals, but like, what is at stake based on what you've seen over the last year or two?
The election in general, everything is at stake. The school board election, our children's future is literally on the ballot. You watched curriculum decisions being made about your children. You've watched resource allocations and how our tax dollars are being spent, how our teachers' compensation is being prioritized, how equity and inclusion plays a role in the decision making, and where people stand around equity and inclusion, and understanding if all children, regardless of their background, zip codes, or whatever, gender, identity, all of those things, will receive access to quality education and support through all of that. Teacher support, compensation is on the ballot, school safety, and like Ethan suggested, like, no, these people don't have direct communication with like who trains officers in their school, but they have a duty to build these relationships with people so that they understand the importance of the role that they play in our school, and they could come in and they can govern their responsibility according to how these elected officials have given them advice to do so. So they have a role to play in that. Just the long-term vision of our community and like those people, I think oftentimes we as adults don't remember that when we are raising and educating our children, we are raising and educating the future people who are going to hold these positions. So how we act now is essentially like what we can expect to see in the future. If we don't give them the tools that they need to move forward, then the future will look a mess if we continue to put mess into the present. You know what I mean? And so that's what's really at stake, is like, how do we want our future to look? Like, literally, do we want to educate and send out competent individuals, or are we, and I think too, like, we don't look at these roles as like, our children are watching how we're governing. They're watching what we're doing. These children, these adolescents, like Ethan was talking about, all of these kids that are sitting on these boards and having all these competent things to say about like, how y'all gonna tell me what to do when you about to be dead in 20 years? Like, that's a real thing. Like, that's a real thing. This is not for my sake, for the person that I'm right here right now, but 20 years down the line, I'm gonna be an old lady. I'm not gonna be at school. I'm not gonna be, hopefully I'm not still showing up at school board meetings, rocking babies. Like, you know what I mean? They're gonna be there, and they're gonna still be dealing with the things that we set in place right now. So how do we want that to look? And we talk about being a change that we want to see. This is the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. How do we want the future to look? And we're all a part of shaping that. So Cajun, like a lot of other organizations, have a lot of resources available. I don't want to say a lot, but there are resources out there. And how do people navigate understanding and learning about the candidates who are on the ballot this, election season?
I imagine that most people are like I used to be, and I used to just be like, whoever my mama vote for, that's who I'm gonna vote for. Whatever my granny doing, that's what I'm gonna do. I would guard against that. I think that this is not the time to always take the side of what somebody else. This is a time to choose and make your own decisions. This is a time to educate yourself and make choices for yourself, and look at candidates who represent and have the character that you want to see represented in your community, and to do that research of like looking at pamphlets that help to identify, that help to understand what platforms people are walking on, and what they say, not just what they say, but what they have done. Let their work show, let their work prove to you who they are, not just what they say, because people will say anything just to get elected, but what they have done is proof in the pudding. So go out and like use Google. Go out there and Google them people, and understand their platform, understand where they have, if they say they want a better community, where have you worked for a better community? Where have you worked to make changes in your community already? What have you already done? What are you already doing to provide a good community in the community that you're in, or the community that you're coming from, or whatever the case may be? Use the resources, like Be the Ones, use E3, use NAACP, use Cajun. We have conversations, community conversations all the time that help us to understand who the candidates are. We've interviewed or had conversations with almost all of the candidates who would come and interview with us, or have conversation with us. And then look at that too. Look at the people who want to have conversations with people in your community. That speaks to their character. That speaks to who they are. That speaks to how they will represent you. Look at all those things and think about that in the context of like what you want to see in your community.
So I'm going to bring Ethan back. But one thing that a couple of people have asked me recently, and I want you to be able to speak a little bit to this around, especially in Charleston County. And I think one of our other local municipalities has moved to single member districts. And so when people are pulling their ballot, some people are being surprised because they thought, the prior, cycle of elections for a school board, they voted. Now they're not voting. So can you just talk about like the importance of pulling that sample ballot and the changes in the single member districts for Charleston County and some of the other local governments?
You asking me first or Ethan first?
I'm asking you first.
Okay. So it's important to pull that ballot so that you can know whether or not it's been changed, obviously, so you can familiarize yourself with the ballot layout, especially if you're a person like we have a lot of people who are voting for the first time, not necessarily that they just turned 18, but we got a lot of people that's, coming in and, reallocating themselves to voting out in this election. So familiarize yourself with all of the things that are on the ballot. It helps you to understand what research needs to be done to be able to like make an informed decision. Like I said, so you won't have to go ask your mom or your grandma, who am I, what does this mean? How does this, you can do it for yourself. In a lot of, like you said, a lot of local counties, including Charleston, have shifted to the single member districts. There's positives and negatives to that. I think it does have a positive of increasing local representation. So like people from your community, our board members are specific to community needs because they do come from those things, and it increases like diversity, all of those
They
types
can
of
send a
things.
newsletter.
Or they can send a newsletter. They have if you know this person from the community, you might find it easier to contact your representative because they are a familiar face, they look like you. All of those things are positives. But it has the potential for creating division. Board members might prioritize their district over the overall countywide concerns of the community. It has possible gerrymandering effects. District boundaries could be drawn to favor certain groups or certain outcomes. It could possibly reduce some broad perspective that the board members might have. They may have less incentive to consider the needs of the entire board. So there are some positives and negatives to those to the outcomes of that. And so but this able to pull your ballot and look at who's on there gives you the ability to make the most informed decision about who you're voting for, where they're coming from, what the platform that they're standing on is, and understand all of that in a better way.
So in our last few moments, so Raynique is leading us into this. Now we've talked about it. We've been talking about it. We've been on this journey for election season for several months. Today is the first day of early voting in South Carolina. It goes until the 2nd. So now we want to get people actually to the polls. So what do I need to do? So I'm pulling my ballot, and now what's next?
I think and you can jump in anytime, Ethan. After I pull my ballot, I plan to do all the research on all of not just the candidates that I want to vote for, which I've already kind of started to do. I'm gonna also look at any local and anything that has to do with any policies on the ballot that I need to research. I'm going to research all of that. I'm going to get an understanding of what it is that is being asked of me and what my answer will be. And then I'm going to call a couple of people in my community so that they can go with me, because I want lottie-dottie and everybody. I know the importance of everybody getting out to vote. So I want to bring some other people with me. And then I want to be like, how am I going to get there? Am I going to drive my car? Who needs to be picked up? are there other folks in my community? If you have any like disability or anything that's hindering you, what are the barriers that you need to address to get to the polls? And how can you address those things? So like, are there community resources in your community that are taking people to the poll? Can you get a ride? Can you get help understanding? Are there congregations in your community? My church, Charity Missionary Baptist Church, is offering rides. You can call a number and they will also help you understand the language on your ballot. They will give you a ride to the polls, all of those things. So make a plan of action so that it gets done, is what I say.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think I told you I voted earlier today. We have my ballot. I was able to pull my sample ballot, and so I can see everything that's on my ballot here. And I have a school board race on my ballot. So I get to deal with that too. And then there's a couple of millages as well. So I made sure to pull it, read through everything. And I'll tell you, I did something that Raynique sort of talked about, which is I created a list of who I was going to vote on, who I was going to vote for, because I think people are curious about who is Ethan going to vote for, and they trust Ethan. And I think this is sort of when community folks have sort of invested in you. They made sure that you were the one who didn't get into the gang, and they knew you were the one that was going to be the nerd of the group, and they knew you was going. They want to know who you going to vote for, who you think, because you are the best of us to some degree, and so I want to make sure I say this. Don't hoard that information. Doesn't mean people are going to vote the way you're going to vote, and don't think that you're arrogant if you share it. I think sharing it allows people to gain another perspective, and you know, it allows them to sort of iron sharpens iron type of thing. And, you know, it may have them question something that they didn't question before. It may ask you, why did you vote for this? Why did you do this? So, you know, don't share your vote. Just let people know where you're going with it, and encourage them to get out there, and certainly do everything that Raynique said, because I think it's beautiful to go with others. Certainly go with, you know, my favorite thing is to go with young people. If you want to be able to ensure that young people have a really good experience voting their first time voting. And if you're an experienced voter, you know, our job is to try to figure out how to make them become chronic voters as we get further and further away from the realities of folks not remembering what it was like to not be able to vote. Our job as ancestor as our ancestors' greatest dreams is to certainly allow for the younger generation to see us acknowledge that, and to make sure young people know we're gonna make sure you're a chronic voter, and to sort of put that on them. Say, hey, look, you gotta not in a creepy way, by the way. I'm not trying to say that, but like, you know, certainly in the circumstances of, you know, hey, I want to put something together for some young people, because I want to make sure that they know that the goal is to become a chronic voter. That is the goal, not just simply to vote in this one election. So
Yeah, in our household, you know, we say we don't care whether we voting on the color of the trash cans that's coming that we gonna roll out to the curb. We go into the polls every time. The polls open, we'll be there. And so I think it's, you know, we were talking about what Raynique and both you and Raynique outlined is what we consider a vote plan. Like, when are you actually going? And you really gotta like schedule that and know when you're going to vote. Some people, I know that some folks were posting today that there's already, you know, people are lining up at our elections commission, but we have several locations all across the different counties here in the Low Country. Don't leave it to chance. If you work and you know that you're not off on election day, then the dates of our early voting are available. Choose one of those dates, including Saturday. Saturday the 27th is voting day, and you don't have to go to your normal polling location. You can go to these other polling locations, so you make it convenient. And talk to your employer. If you do have to vote on election day, make sure you advocate for yourself that this is important. I need to be able to do that, and oftentimes there's a conversation to be had. You raising your hand or you testifying?
I am. I'm raising my hand. I wanted to also say, like, if you need help, like, reach out to your community. Like I said, there are lots of resources that are available to help you to know your rights when you're going to a voting place. Some places require ID in some states. I know here you are required to show ID. Know your rights when you're going there. And also, I wanted to just piggyback off of Ethan's comment about the young persons voting. It doesn't just mean the youth that are voting, but part of being our ancestors' dream is to the continuation of the dream. Make it exciting for the youth to be able to participate in this. Like, make this a party, get them excited, get them involved, talk to them about what's happening, what's going on, what make the process exciting for them. Answer their questions, even if they're not voting this year. Answer their inquiries about, like, why you're doing this. Make it and help them to want to do this in the future times.
Yeah, there's two things I'd say on that, and I think that's beautiful. One, your school board can also be a real key to make sure that this happens for young people in the district. They can literally set policies and create resolutions that call for the voter education, registration, and implementation amongst your young people. So here's another thing that you can certainly create for you, ask your board and your board members to do, such that, again, voter registration becomes a whole thing. And the reason it becomes like a party and becomes a thing that your community remembers and your young people remember, and they know where they were when they first got registered, and they know where they what election they first participated in. And the reason why this is largely important, and Audrey, I think you did a beautiful job of acknowledging y'all gonna vote for all the things, is because most 100%, most chronic voters who vote at least 70 to 80% of the time, I vote 100% of the time according to the voter rolls, they get most of the information. So when you think about candidates trying to spend money on who they're gonna advocate to, they advocate to me. I get every thing. I get every letter. I get every text message. If Kamala don't stop texting me at this point, Lord, I'm gonna vote. I voted, Kamala. I did. I voted already. I swear to God, we best friends at this point. The amount of text messages I get. So I'm saying that type of access happens to a certain set of people where you won't even know that this is happening. You probably, if you ain't getting the text, if you haven't received a text from Kamala, that's because you don't vote, y'all. And so, or you don't vote enough times where you are chronic enough for them to think your vote matters to be included. And so there's certainly this access that comes from voting and becoming a chronic voter that ultimately also unlocks a certain group of people and not just a certain group of people, but a certain type of access and revere towards who you are in that community. So we want you to unlock that for not just you, but for young people that are coming behind you, because I've seen elections get won and lost by less than 10 votes. Like, people's votes matter, especially locally. It matters. You need to go vote. And I've seen people curse out family members for not, all I needed was 5 more. And you start asking people and you're like, did you vote? You're like, oh my God. So it does matter.
And what we've been discussing tonight is school board elections. And I will just say, school board elections are not at the top of the ballot. You got to go all the way down to the end of the ballot. We also have a constitutional amendment on our ballot in South Carolina, which, well, across the country, but which also is confusing language. So to Raynique's point, ask the questions because people are here to help you. So Letitia, do you want to bring up the resources slide? We talked about how you get to the polls. I know that Charity is providing transportation. I know that Royal Baptist in North Charleston as well. And we will continue to update our resources around people being able to get to the polls. Remember that it is early voting season. You can vote. It started today, but tomorrow, 8:30 to 6 p.m. every day through Saturday. You cannot vote on Sunday the 28th, but then you can continue to vote Monday through Saturday, November 2nd. And that's when early voting ends in South Carolina. And then, of course, on the day of Tuesday, November 5th. And if you choose, some people have a tradition. They want to go and be on election day. It's going to be, just set your mind, get your mind right. Take your book, take your comfortable shoes, take your snacks, your water, understand your rights, but know that you're going to be there for a while. Go early. And our community member, Radia Baxter, would not be happy if I did not say, if you are in that line at 6:59, you have the right to vote. Doesn't matter whether you are 2 miles from the door. If you are in the line at 6:59 on November 5th, you have the right to vote. And so we'll have a number of resources available for you. So I will ask Raynique, would you like to offer closing thoughts? And I would give you 2 minutes or less, please, ma'am.
I would just say, ever since I started voting early, my life has changed. Vote early. Get in there. Get in there and get out of there. Do the thing and go home. Do what you came to do. And that my pastor always said the right to vote was paid for, and you did not earn it. It was paid for in blood. And so it was a blood-stained right. So you have a duty to our ancestors to get out and vote because they could not. And so go do it.
Yes. Ethan?
Yeah, I think that was beautifully said. I will say, I just want to make sure you all be strong. Y'all know we have hard work to do, heavy loads to lift. Shun not strife, face it, for it's God's gift. Be strong. Say not the days are evil, know who's to blame. Fold thy hands in iniquity, stand up, speak out bravely in God's name. Be strong. It matters not how hard the battles. Faint not, fight on, for tomorrow come strong. Be strong. I want y'all to be strong. Go vote. Do your thing.
Yes. So thank you all for being with us tonight. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you so much. Chronic voter. I love t-shirts. I got one on tonight. The D4 will be strolling to the polls. So get with your people, whoever your people are, get out there, ask questions. You also can take your own notes into the polling place. But do it early, because what I'm trying to do is also be available to the community to do other things to support other people. So I want to check the box. I'm done. So now I can be of service to other folks. Take someone to the polls with you. Check on our seasoned saints. Absentee ballots the application for them is due Friday. So we have an application process in South Carolina. You cannot do it online. You have to either call the election commission here, or you can mail it in. At this point, I would not suggest that. So you need to call or you can fax. The online option was taken away in 2024. So speaking of policies and things we need to do, but that deadline is Friday, and then they will send you your ballot. And as long as you turn in that ballot to a polling location by 7 p.m. on November 5th, it should be counted. So we thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being with us. For those of you who are going to catch the replay, please tag it, share it with your friends, and we'll put all of the resources and all of the conversations that have been around the Low Country around school board elections. We're going to compile them and put them in one place, because we do believe it is one of the most important elections, and there's a lot on the ballot, and our children, more than anything, are a part of that conversation. So thank you all for tuning in, and have a good night.